you're open to learning and reaching out for information. I think a lot of salespeople in the past, their experience has been different.
We are not successful as individuals, and we do not bring enough to the table here for All Western Mortgage if we are not problem solvers, if we cannot find solutions and find ways for these borrowers and these clients to get to the closing table.
Joining me on today's episode is Lisa Smith, Underwriting Manager at All Western Mortgage. Lisa has many years of experience in the mortgage industry and will provide great insight into how underwriters really think. I'm really excited for this conversation. Make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. Lisa, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so let's dive right in.
Okay.
I'm going to start with some basic questions here just to kind of get things warmed up. How long have you been in the mortgage industry?
Close to 40 years, about 37 years now.
Wow. Would you start at like 14 years old?
Almost. I started I got my first job as a receptionist at a commercial lender. And I think I was 16 or 17.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you and I go way back in this business.
We're 20 years.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah.
I know. That was my next question. You've been with All Western about 20 years, different roles along the way, but currently you are in charge of the entire underwriting team.
Yeah. It's a blessing.
Yeah.
Every day I wake up, I'm so thankful.
What an important role though, really. And that's, there's a lot I want to cover today in that. But ultimately, it's one of the most important components in any mortgage business for a number of reasons. I think, first of all, it's a service-oriented department, right? We're providing service to our loan officers, to our borrowers. But on the other side, there's this component of quality that's required, right? So you guys really walk two lanes, in my opinion. So we talk about this all the time. Loans are not just numbers, right?
No.
There are real human beings behind those loans. Talk to me a little bit about that part of the business. How do you manage understanding that there's a family behind this loan, maybe a real estate agent, a loan officer? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing is that regardless of how that loan was originated or who it was originated by, it is a loan that we need to get to the closing table. And we're all very much aware that there are multiple parties attached to that loan. The borrowers probably being our main focus, right? We want to make sure that we're doing a service to that borrower by approving a loan in their price range that they can afford, that's not going to create some sort of financial hardship down the road for them. So that's our number one concern. And then second to that is, do they qualify for the loan? And maybe at first glance, they don't qualify, but we take a step back, we take a look at it, we see if we can tweak some things here or there, paint a prettier picture than how it was submitted to us. And then we come out with some results.
Well, one thing you told me before we went on camera was that you block out and really don't want to know who the players are, meaning loan officer or processor.
Yeah.
You really look at it in the context of the facts, right? What do I have in front of me, and try to eliminate the noise of who may be involved in the transaction. Why is that your process?
We're underwriters, but we're all human, right? And there are interactions that take place that, not just professionally, but personally in life too, where you walk away and you think to yourself, I really didn't enjoy that conversation. I don't really want to repeat it. So you have to strip that away. It doesn't matter to us in underwriting who the processor is and who the loan officer is, because every file needs to get a fair shake, regardless of our personal feelings about how it was originated or who it was originated by. So that's the very first thing we have to do, because it's not personal and we can't take it personal. Right? There are people out there, homeowners or hopeful homeowners, that want to get into a file, and they don't care about what other kind of little spats that we're having on the side.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to make sure that our focus is always on the borrower, their needs, their loan requests that we have in front of us. And does it make sense?
So you talked about making a decision that would be ultimately beneficial to the borrower, meaning that, and we had the business mortgage industry has a history of creative products that probably put the consumer in a very difficult situation. 2008, 2010.
Oh, yeah.
We had loans available to us where we didn't have to put any income, where people who, at the end of the day, we probably knew couldn't afford the home that they were going into.
Right.
That's changed now. And so from my perspective, you guys care about that. You really want to make that's a component and a part of your underwriting process, making sure, hey, are we doing the right thing for the consumer?
Every person that I value in my life wants to set me up for success and not failure, right? So that's how I approach a loan. I want to set that borrower up, and I'm sure the loan officers and the processors that all have the same approach. We want to make sure that they don't fail, that they are successful homeowners, and really the only way to do that is make sure that we're qualifying them for a loan that they can afford and is sustainable for them long term. I mean, first-time home buyers, they get so excited. Yes, you're pre-qualified and here's your price range. Well, they walk into this house that might be a little above their price range and they fall in love with it. And now we're all scrambling trying to figure out how to make that happen for them when really, truly, it's probably not the best thing for them. The best thing was, let's stick to your price range. Make sure you're comfortable. Make sure you understand what the responsibility is owning a home and making those payments and being able to afford those payments. Because it's not just affording the house, it's also affording the life that you want to live in addition to owning that home.
That's a great point. We say all the time that a mortgage or a home purchase is the largest single transaction that most people will ever make in their life. And what you're telling us is that it's not just about getting the keys to that home. It's making sure after you have those keys, that is something that really is to your benefit. And so I want to kind of understand a time maybe where you had to make a decision, a tough decision. Then you have to interact with that same individual maybe on the next file. How do you approach that conversation?
Well, for me, it's easier than most, probably. I don't want to say it's an easy conversation to have because nobody wants to hear what they perceive to be negative news or bad news, right? They all want to hear the best come out of their mouths. But I try to have those conversations with a backup plan, with an alternative solution for them. And maybe that is a delay in closing for a week or two. And maybe that means we delay it for a couple of months until we can get some things lined up. But at least after that conversation, my hope is that that originator or the processor, whomever it is, understands that there is a course of action that they get to take that will ultimately result in a closed file for their borrower.
Yeah, and I think what I have seen, and I think this is really what you've done a fantastic job at instilling in the team, is that we're going to give it 1,000%. We're going to do everything we can.
We climb every mountain, Chris.
We will leave no stone unturned, all of the cliche terms, to get that loan to the finish line. And ultimately, I would say you're highly successful at that, meaning that that in most situations, we figure out a way to get us where we need to be. Now, on the other side of that conversation, and we touched on it briefly early on, is the quality piece. There is a component of responsibility that you have, to the organization. And ultimately, that the performance of that loan over a period of time. So talk a little bit about that balance.
Okay. So we all know, especially probably in the last 5 years or so, we have more and more loan officers that are kind of new to the industry, right? So they don't have a whole lot of experience and knowledge in really kind of perfecting a file for submission. And the same goes with processors. We have some that are very experienced, and then we have some that are just learning. So oftentimes what happens is they're putting things together in a file that they think the underwriter needs to see to support something within that file, whatever the component is. What happens more often than not is that there's too much in that file. They've over-documented it, they've over-disclosed, and what we need to do is kind of strip away all of that, get down to the bones of that file, and then start putting it back together in a way that we understand we have identified risk, we've cured those risk levels, and we know that when we deliver that loan, not only close it for the borrower, but deliver it to our investor, that it's going to get purchased. And that doesn't mean that every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed, and that doesn't mean that every guideline is followed to the letter, because every agency and every investor allows us as a lender to apply our own level of due diligence. And if we can make sense and draw a picture and connect all those dots, and we can do it for everybody else that's going to touch that file beyond us, then we've done our job and that loan's going to get closed. And sometimes we do massage some of those guidelines a little bit to kind of fit the scenario that we have in front of us. It's just knowing how far you can push that needle, where those lines are soft and when they become hard.
I mean, I've always said it's more of an art than a science.
Yeah, hands down.
Right. And in the past,
I was nervous you were going to ask me, what's your plan? Well, it's really case by case. Every file is different.
No, and I get that. There's many nuances, and even within the framework of any loan program, there are so many variables involved that make it challenging for you and your team. But again, I think the key component here, and what's important for everybody to understand, is that you're going to use every tool, every possible strategy and tactic to get
every resource that we have available to us.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is we need to make sure that we document the borrower's ability to repay that loan. Not only repay it, but repay it in a timely manner, right? And that sometimes means I have conversations with the underwriters, I'm having live conversations with loan officers, I'm having live conversations with the agencies directly, things that need to be kind of dialed in and tied together with a pretty little bow oftentimes. And, I don't know everything. So I do have to reach out, and I do have relationships established with those agencies, and they're a good resource for myself and our underwriting team.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, and then we can move on. But you mentioned you don't know everything. And I think that's one of the best qualities about you and those on your team, is that you're open to learning and reaching out for information. I think a lot of salespeople in the past, their experience has been different. It's been, hey, I'm the underwriter, I know everything.
Yes.
This is the answer, take it or leave it. And that's not the case with you on your team.
And it hasn't been for quite some time. And if you go into a job like ours with that attitude, you're not going to last very long. Maybe 10 or 15 years ago, the power of the pen quote that people used to say all the time, that was probably more prevalent than it is now. We are not successful as individuals, and we do not bring enough to the table here for All Western Mortgage if we are not problem solvers, if we cannot find solutions and find ways for these borrowers and these clients to get to the closing table.
Well, we talk a lot about that here on this podcast. It starts at the top. The leadership sets the tone for the team, and you've done a great job at setting that tone. So congratulations. Let's switch gears to technology now.
Oh, my favorite subject.
I know. So here's the bottom line, right? We understand and that the industry has and is going to continue to change. The big question is how much and when. For the most part, we've manufactured a loan in a similar fashion for many years. Yes, it's gone from the old paper file that we would hold on to and flip through to now everything digital. We've got 4 monitors to be able to look at all the different documents. But we are starting to see some new technology, whether it's through artificial intelligence, whether it's improved income calculation tools, things of that nature. So I want to hear from you. We can talk basic, but overall, what are you seeing as an advantage to you and your team, and kind of give us a little bit of insight as to how that's helping you at this point?
For conventional loans, especially, the Day One Certainty by Fannie Mae, the AIM by Freddie Mac, those really do allow us to streamline our review process when the file is in underwriting. If you receive an AUS finding and it has Day One Certainty on there, or you're running LP and it has the income relief noted on there as well, our underwriters aren't going to review your employment. They're not going to review your income. They're not going to calculate your income. So that in itself, employment and income really is the bulk of what we're reviewing besides the collateral in a file. And if we've got Day One Certainty on those files, that eliminates that review time. Not only does it eliminate and reduce the amount of time we spend on a file, but it also eliminates the disputes that can happen when a branch calculates income versus when an underwriter calculates income. All of that is stripped away because it's already been validated. And there's a couple of ways to get that validation. right? The vendor VOEs, work number, I think, is the most common one out there. But there's also blend that we use here at All Western Mortgage. And if these clients are authorizing that 12-month review, asset review of their accounts, oftentimes the system recognizes the deposits that are going in there. They scrub it against the income that's on that 1003, and all of a sudden, you don't need a VOE anymore
Wow.
because Blend has validated your employment and your income and your assets.
Okay, so let's stop right there.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So let's take a couple of steps back because you gave us a lot to think about.
Jump through that too quick.
There, you mentioned conventional. There are the two agencies, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. They are the main purchasers, kind of guarantors of conventional mortgages. They have automated underwriting systems, which basically the file data is uploaded into and it renders a decision.
Yes.
And we typically, that's our kind of our playbook for closing that loan. It's going to give us our approval, all the different things that it's requiring. What has happened is essentially it is streamlining that process, through different data resources that it's pulling into to validate the information without us having to do it. Perfect. Okay. And then from there, obviously, you're doing a number of things. You're creating less documentation. You're creating a better experience for the consumer, I would imagine, right? We're not nickel and diming them. Pay stubs and bank statements and things of that nature. And you're creating a much faster process for everyone involved. Did I get that?
Yes, 100%.
Right. So is it underutilized?
100% it's underutilized. Yes. It's very rare that I see files coming through where Blend has been utilized and they haven't done that 12-month look back, right? When they can. It's often where a file comes in without a VOE and we have pay stubs, either current pay stub plus your year-end pay stubs or your W-2s, and that's what they want to use to calculate income, when none of that really would have been required had they understood what resources they have available. And associating those reports within the AUS system, it's really just a click of a button is all it is. It starts with the borrower at the application. You could probably clear up how those steps taken on the borrower side, but I know once they select that 12-month look back on Blend, they all speak to each other. And all of a sudden, a loan officer on Monday has a file that they originated on Tuesday. That borrower completed the steps they needed to complete in Blend. And by Wednesday or Thursday, you submit that file for underwriting. Now you're a rock star because you have an approval within the first 5 days of talking to your client. And not only is that impressive for your borrower, it's impressive for your real estate agents.
And at the same time, you've created a very good customer experience because they're going to say to that real estate agent, hey, I didn't have to provide hardly any information.
Everybody is so excited when they book a vacation, right? Oh, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to be. And then they have to start paying for things, right? And then it's an add-on here and an add-on there. And that's ends up being not such a great experience, right? When you come in for a loan, it's you kind of have to treat it the same way. A borrower is very excited about buying this house and getting into that house and getting their loan closed and affording it and moving forward. How awesome would it be for you to be able to present to your borrower, here's our platform, complete these steps, and in 4 or 5 days, I'm going to have a full loan approval for you.
So part of that is going to require some borrower education, and we need to work on that. I think, a lot of people are still a little bit hesitant to turn, link up bank accounts and enter passwords into systems. And I understand that. But what the agencies, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, have really created is a foolproof way to do that.
Correct.
So we
and
just
it's protected.
We just have to educate a little bit more. And that even goes to appraisals. You're getting appraisal waivers in some situations where we're not even required to provide an appraisal to the file. Is that correct?
Yes, that's 100% correct. So we pulled some numbers from Fannie not too long ago. 83% of the loans that Fannie is guaranteeing have some level of day one certainty that has been utilized during that transaction, whether it's a waiver for the appraisal or your validated assets, employment, or income. And more files and companies are going in that direction. We are a little slow in taking advantage of that technology.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. So, but this is the path. If we want to improve the customer experience, this is where we're going to do it. Right. Yeah.
100%. And you had mentioned there's some AI resources that are coming into play, and I am excited about that as well. People, I think, naturally are kind of fearful of AI, right? For a few different reasons. One, I think people might be concerned that it's going to take over the world, where I might even have a little bit of a concern that it's going to take over the world. But at the end of the day, we understand that there are AI tools that are going to be beneficial in our industry, and there are going to be AI tools that we'll probably never see again. And taking advantage of those ones that are going to allow us to move forward more effectively, more efficiently, and faster than anybody else on the planet, I'm all for that. And everybody should be for that.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to balance that. I think it's like you said, there's a fear.
Yep.
Is it going to take my job? Am I
Right.
next? I think what we've tried to really focus on is creating efficiencies, creating a higher quality of work. Those are the things I think that we've been focused
Right.
on artificial intelligence. Is there a misconception? Well, we just touched on one, but overall, is there a misconception about some of the new technologies, both good and bad? Because we may think it solves all the problems, and it may not. What would you say your day to day are you seeing that?
I think that there is, especially with day one certainty, that there is a little bit of a misconception out there. I think that if they order that um, work number VOE or use that blend report and it does validate that income, that they're stuck with that income no matter what. And that's not true. We can strip away those validations if there are documents in the file or scenarios that we come across where we can use a little bit more income than what has been recognized by the blend report or by your work number VOE. So it's not if it it becomes an option to have your validated income, employment, and assets, you're stuck in that. You're not. You have the option to strip that away and recalculate it and take a different method and an approach. So I think that's a misconception out there. The other thing is, I think that people believe that the information is not accurate, which is, they're basing these decisions in this data or off of hard data, right? It does a complete analysis of your financial background. It has your credit, it has your employment, it has your income, it has all your deposits on your thing. So it is fair to say that there's enough information that it's analyzing that it's going to be fairly accurate.
What I'm hearing you say is that the data is the integrity's there in terms of the data, but there is still a human element
Right,
that we will apply
right.
to the decision-making process.
Right.
The
There are always people think the more tools we use, the less likely the need for my role or an underwriter position or a processor position. That's not true. We are humans and humans are imperfect. AI technology doesn't understand at least at this stage, I don't think.
Yeah.
It doesn't understand the nuances and there's certain things that we do have to massage and certain things that we may have to take different approaches on. It doesn't have that type of thought process applied to it, and that's where we come into play.
Yeah, good. I want to switch gears back to, and we did touch earlier, but leadership and team culture. It's a big part of building your department. You've got 14, 15 people underneath you currently,
Yeah.
all of them with different skills and capabilities and all that. But really, how I think the reputation of underwriters, and again, we touched on this, but as a gatekeeper, as someone who you have to get past to make that loan, to get that loan approved. How do you coach and train your team to be open-minded and accepting of other information?
That takes a little bit of finesse too. You know, everybody has a different approach and a different style and a different personality, and it requires us to kind of take the time to understand their approach, understand their personality, and understand how we relay information to them. But the number one thing that I try to impress upon everybody in our underwriting department is a loan file may come in to your desk and your first reaction, maybe this doesn't qualify. And that's fine. And maybe it doesn't qualify how it's submitted. But what we need to understand as underwriters here at All Western Mortgages, it's not our job just to say, hey, this file doesn't work. It's not qualifying. Our job is to look at it completely in its entirety and understand what is happening within these first 2 years, the 2 years that this application covers, and then provide an alternative solution. Yes, it may not qualify as it's submitted, but your worth as an underwriter here at All Western Mortgage is not very high that if we can't work together to come up with a solution to solve it. And I think that we have a good group in front of us now, with us now, that understands what the expectation is from them at their level. There are a lot of companies out there where it is very much automated. It comes in and it has to fit inside this box. And if it doesn't, they're sending out a decline letter. And that's not how it works here. If it doesn't fit into this box, we're going to reshape that box and or that file until it does fit.
Yeah. What type of a personality would not be a fit for your team?
The power of the pen mentality, really. Someone who says, I'm right and you're wrong. That's really not the approach and it doesn't, you're closed off. And if you're closed off, then you are to others or to options, then you're closed off to advancing in your knowledge, advancing in your experience. And those things are changing every day. Information changes every day. The approach changes every day. The investor adds requirements every day, not the investor so much, but agencies. And we're not always right. And 15 years ago, I did think I was right all the time. But it's still, in the end, we have to do our due diligence, utilize every resource we have available before we go to a client. And yes, our loan officer is our client, and say, hey, this loan doesn't work. This is what your game plan is moving forward, or it's going to work if we can, tweak it here, whatever it might be. But just to give them a hard no, that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. And again, you mentioned the LO is our customer.
Yeah.
I think that's an important statement. And that's something that we have to constantly be maintaining. And especially as we continue to grow as an organization, we'll be bringing new people in who need that influence, who need to see that leadership by example, and I guess really be further cemented in our culture. And
it's the kind of life that we choose to live. If we treated everybody that we interact with, whether it's at work or at home or whatever it might be, with a certain level of respect and customer service. And I know that probably sounds a little silly, but if you're polite and you're pleasant and you know what you're talking about, your relationships are going to be cemented. You are going to establish new relationships. People are going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to seek out your advice and your counsel because they understand that you're coming from a place that really is in their best interest, especially here at All Western Mortgage.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I think we should end it right there. That is perfect way. Seriously, I think that's a perfect way to end this conversation, and it really gives everyone some real insight into how you operate and how your team operates. So Lisa, thank you for joining me today. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
You're welcome.
All right.